Just stop it. The run-of-the-mill, cheesy, humdrum bullshit status quo just tires me out. What fascinates me are the industry disruptors, the superhuman frontiersmen or women who go through hell to achieve their goals. Join me as we meet and learn from those mavericks, rebels, and business leaders that aren't afraid to piss off the establishment in order to make radical change for good. Sponsored by Johto PR, the disruptive anti-PR firm that murders your competition with cinder blocks and cyanide. This is Disruption Interruption. Welcome back, everybody, to Disruption Interruption. I'm your host, KJ, and we're here today to talk to another industry leader that has steered off the lame, tired path of the status quo. Today's guest has dedicated her entire life to disrupting the status quo. She is considered a challenge junkie. I cannot wait to find out about this. Early in her career, she beat out 240 men in an American software company to become the #1 saleswoman in that enterprise. In the early 90s, venture capitalists simply did not fund women in technology. So she took that challenge and she went on to fund a startup that grew from 23 million in revenues to 400 million in less than 5 years. But we're talking to her today because she is especially passionate about helping CEOs understand and value the role human capital plays in innovation in our ever-increasing cyber artificial intelligence world. She's a mastermind behind an integrated artificial intelligence and machine learning platform as a service to simplify the art and science of decision making. I cannot wait. Coming to us live from Durham, North Carolina, please welcome our disruptor, CEO at Plaza Bridge Group, Teresa Spangler.
Thank you, Carla Jo. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me and having me today.
You are so welcome. Well, I learned that you were a challenge junkie, and I was like, that's it. I'm talking to this woman.
My whole life, because it feeds me, and it probably does you too. I think a lot of us I especially love, give me something that's messy and let me turn it into art. It just feeds me. And because I think sometimes we think we can't do it, it's not possible. And I love the fact that everything's possible. Anything, 100% is possible 100% of the time. So how do we make that happen?
I love that. There's always a solution. You just need to go out and find it.
Yes. Somewhere. It doesn't have to cost money. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me, based on that, what is your fundamental ingredient, your main fundamental ingredient for disruptive innovation?
People are the center for me, and it's doing something for humanity in innovation. So much innovation has so much opportunity to help people. And so I look for that innovation and disruption for good, where we can improve healthcare, where we can improve equality, where we can, these technologies all have that ability. And if I can help CEOs and founders find that secret ingredient for this raw technology that they haven't quite figured out what the product might be for that to me is my just drive. That's my secret, I think, power, if you will.
Underneath it all is people.
It is, to me. Humanity and environment. Yeah. The environment's really big, but it still comes back to people, right? If we're not serving the environment and in protecting the environment, we're hurting people. If we can't grow food, we're hurting people.
That's true. Why do we have all this technology? It's to help people, right?
It is.
Well, let's talk about the status quo for this, because you use artificial intelligence and machine learning to help people, right? Mm-hmm. And to spur innovation and to help with the decision making.
Right.
Let's talk about the status quo of decision making in corporate America or small businesses. Or
I have this discussion, I think, every day. I'll put it in these terms. Some of the challenge with decision making is sometimes there's not necessarily a published process by which maybe it's the CEO or the board of directors. They haven't built a framework around how to build a good decision-making process in the organization. So the alignment between what the C-suite feels like needs to happen and the board of directors versus what actions people on their teams are taking and how they come up to that C-suite to get approval or decisions on actions they think are really important is a huge gap. And so the ability to be able to close that gap using a framework, leveraging non-partial information and data, but then also putting an external factor of data things that, would influence that decision from the outside. And then there's an element of intuition that we don't want to lose that. Bringing all of those elements around is really what our game day decision, that was the whole purpose behind game day, is bring it and make it easier for alignment on these ideas and prioritization on how the funding needs to be spent on these decisions.
So basically there's a misalignment from the board to the C-suite to the rest of the company or middle management and so forth.
I'm not even sure if it's a misalignment as much as it's a gap in information, which is sort of alignment, but there's this, we need our team to do this. I need my people to be able to take more, ownership or accountability. And then you have a lot of the department heads are saying, I can't get a decision made. I can't move. And so this sort of stuckness happens.
They can't get a decision made, or they can't move because they can't get things approved, or they don't know how to get things approved.
Well, they feel like they can't get things approved, but in reality, that formal process for what's the C-suite looking for? What do we really need to justify that decision? Some of those elements a lot of times are just missing. And so you're putting information forward, but you're not giving me the carrot that I need to know that, for example, I'm going to say I want to get something approved, and it's an idea or a new product that I would love to put some money into to go and get some resource behind. Well, what's the justification? And sometimes we might have some kind of market justification, but what we haven't done is analyze it all the way through to say, the market looks like it would do this, and the opportunity looks like this. But what we didn't do is the risk assessment. What happens if? What's my backtrack? What's my pivot? What's the next stage? How might I iterate this idea so I'm not taking 2.5 million right up front? I'm taking 250,000 and building this framework to test these ideas. So sometimes there's that gap, and if we step it out and we put a little more detail behind it and we show the risk factor, is it a 1, 2, or 3? How does my company evaluate risk? Are we disruptors or are we iterative kind of innovators? And we need to know those things. And I think sometimes that's just built into the culture, or it's missing in the culture. So that information is a gap in my mind a lot of times.
It sounds like what's missing, and forgive me if I'm just dumbing this down, but I listen to this and what you say and try to have my own, cognitions and epiphanies about it, right? Especially for our listeners. But you're talking about a gap in critical thinking.
Very good. Very good way to put it. I wish I'd said that.
Well, that's my job in life, right? To be able to communicate it to the masses, right? But so there's a gap in critical thinking, and what is this costing organizations, and what is it costing in terms of effort, as far as like how much of the organization is spent turning their wheels on this, or lost revenues? Or
I love that question. Because so many of the environments that I go into, and I can give an example, real world example. They have an innovation office, and that office has given budget, and they've worked with other consultants, they've worked with contractors, and when I come in, the story I always get told is, well, we've spent that money before. It just doesn't go anywhere. It goes flat. And then that money's wasted because they can't get the product out the door, or they don't have the feature set rich enough, and they don't know how those features should be developed. So you take that example. Well, when I come in, I do what I feel like I'm best at. And that's that alignment that you're mentioning. Let's make sure we understand what's not working in this. Most of the time, it's that you haven't built enough understanding, especially if you need your organization around what the purpose of that innovation might be. And sometimes, in this particular case, if we're going to monetize data and we're going to use an artificial chat, we're going to use that artificial intelligence to build an artificial conversational application. That conversational application to some of the people inside the company that actually do that role feel threatened. So it doesn't have potentially the chance and support you need to get that technology out the door, even spend money on developing it. So it becomes an effort of go back to people. How do you engage the people so that they don't feel threatened by the new technology in their own companies and they want to help drive this through? And for them, they need the story. What's the story this technology is going to do? How will it empower more people? We're not taking your jobs. We're actually wanting to put the technology in the hands of more people. So it's that kind of support when you're trying to build something disruptive. It's that story that you have to build to the executive team and all the way through the organization, because you're going to need them for the most part.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it sounds like a PR campaign internally. I know working with disruptors, they have that externally because they have a huge education gap as to why this disruption is needed and what is the purpose behind it, right?
That's correct.
So,
now, I was just going to say, there's the other side of that where sometimes, and this isn't a bad thing, the CEO may say, I don't want to disrupt my day-to-day. This is going to be a net new disruptive product. Go work with a small team and let's figure out how we get this out the door most effectively. Those are sometimes cleaner because you're starting from build. It's almost like an entrepreneurial venture studio inside the company.
Yeah. And, I would imagine it would be cleaner and easier.
Yes.
But
yeah.
What's the percentage of that going?
That's less. I would say it's probably been 25% versus the other is you got to have the resources internal to the organization supporting the effort to get it out.
Yeah, exactly. So do we have any figures? It's like how much money is wasted or lost or, or do you just have examples like,
well, I
remember talking to a company not too long ago and they had, spent $350,000 on a particular new technology product for innovation. And you know what? They hadn't used it or done anything with it for over a year.
I don't. I wish I had those numbers in front of me. There are numbers that show, but the numbers are in the millions. And it's going to depend on the size of the company. Like there is a Fortune 20 company that we've worked with and talked to. We didn't do an engagement. We talked to the innovation officer. And in that case, he had spent himself, I want to say 25 million on various, because it's a huge organization, on various innovations in the company and maybe had one success that they could actually tout out of the 25. So that's millions of dollars. And there's all kinds of reasons, right? There's the support, didn't get the organizational support. They might have had a start, but then they didn't do the market intelligence to understand where this product might fit. So it stalls and it's not returning fast enough. I have an article that is the paradox of innovating for good. And in that article, it does have some of those stats in there that the barriers are sometimes so strong that you didn't do the government compliance detail. You don't have them in your bank early on, and so it gets stalled when it has to get to some kind of compliant or regulatory approval stage. And so by not engaging people early on, you risk that stall or even the stop of a technology. But it's millions. If it's a big company, it's millions.
Yes, makes sense. So we have politics, we have market intelligence, we have government or regulatory compliance. Is there a set number of, items that have to be considered in this critical thinking thought process?
There are multiple innovation processes. Stage gate is one. Design thinking is somewhat an iterative sort of, innovation model. But in all of them, it's pick the one that works for your company, that a framework, whether you want to call it or use stage gate, and iterate on that model. In the ones that we've been in some cases, they don't have a framework and we'll help them put something in that works for their culture and their company. In other cases, they may, for example, be using stage gate, and we'll build an iterative process that fills in some gaps, even that we think stage gate, those different stages that you have to take from idea to market out. And that commercialization. So we'll look and sometimes build in other just simple processes that make it easier for the company to digest the innovation, getting it out the door.
Right.
But we have, I evaluate what those barriers are before we even, try to develop out. And again, I go back to the example, what's the competency of the organization in AI? What's their competency with data? If they're a traditional company, they may have a lot of data scientists, but they're not technology savvy. So how can we help them? They have to gain some expertise before they can get this technology out the door and try to support it. So how do we help that and give them the chance? If they want to be disruptive and they choose to do so, then how do we give them some of the experience and education and mentorship that they need to be able to support that once we've got it in a customer's hands? Those are critical parts. So sometimes they don't go thought all the way through.
Yeah. Do they even know what disruption is?
Many times not, especially for their own organization. With the simple question of how might we monetize our data? Do we even have any data that could be monetized? That's a great question. How do I monetize it? Goes all the way back to, they're not thinking necessarily disruption, but they think they want to have this great new thing that's going to change the market. That's another way to say disruptive. So, it may come out in different ways. We do, I've done a lot of educational sessions on what is disruption, and you don't have to just disrupt. You can have lots of different forms of innovation that really put your company to a competitive advantage, which right now, as we did in COVID, and we're in a whole nother sort of era of economic challenge. We need to be looking at those challenges face on with what's it going to take for my company to continue this growth. Most likely there's going to be something new that you're going to need to do.
That makes sense.
If you don't do it, your customers are already making those changes.
Yeah.
So how are your customers looking at all of that?
Disruption has become a serious buzzword, and people don't always know that disruptive innovation means that you have created a product typically or service, typically through technology, that has handled a pent-up demand from a very key target audience. That makes things more accessible, more transparent, more available to them.
Yeah.
That really changes a whole value network. It changes a whole economic network. It cuts out the middlemen. I don't think all innovation needs to be disruptive, but we do have a lot of disruptive technology today.
That is absolutely the truth. I agree. It doesn't have to be disruptive. I teach an innovation management course at a university, and we're working with we do projects. So we're working with a venture-backed in healthcare AI company, and they're not innovating. They're innovating process. They're innovating a different way to do something. They are leveraging AI, but that in itself is not necessarily a disruptive thing. So it's business model innovation is what they've done to sort of change the game of how they can support the healthcare industry. And so it can be different. It can be business model. It can be an iterative, iteration of your current product that has something really edgy and new to it, and it's changing the game. So this game-changing idea doesn't have to be disruptive. It just has to change the game. Disruptive to me is Elon Musk, who's just building tunnels and he's just doing things we don't even think we need.
Well, I do believe that disruption is happening a lot today. Well, I see it. I see it all the time in our clients. I see it all the time in our guests.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, you changed the landscape of what SMBs are able to be have access to, that really puts them on the level playing field of the Goliaths. That's very disruptive, right?
It is. And the one point you bring out too is, can your customers keep up with that disruption? Are you trying to serve your current customer base with that disruption, or is it going to require that and provide you the opportunity for net new customers?
Well, hopefully it provides opportunity for net new customers. That would be growth, right?
Absolutely. But there are a lot of companies trying to figure out, how do I make sure I don't lose my current customer set? So you do want to look, I agree totally with you. You want that net new, but if you have, 1,000 customers, 10,000 customers, you don't want to lose them all. You might want to lose some of them because they're not profitable. So absolutely, you do want to think through the customer side of things.
For sure. Well, we do have a certain percentage of listeners that are from very large corporations that have chief innovation officers, and they're looking to see what their younger, more nimble, smaller counterparts are doing. So we've spoken a little bit about AI, but let's get into this AI and machine learning to simplify decision-making, right? So we have this critical thinking issue that is a broken juncture between different decision makers or communicators, right? How do you use AI to simplify that?
Well, I would say it's gathering. It's pulling from internal knowledge automatically. So it's pulling data, knowledge centers. Where are my centers of competency? For, let's say, we're trying to make a decision about a new technology or a disruptive idea. AI can help me understand the knowledge base and the experience of all my organization. Do we have the experience in-house to handle that? Do we need to put in programs to educate, to fill the gap in that side? The data on customers. I mean, we can use sentiment analysis, conversational, information that's going on with the sales reps. Is anything coming to us that we can pick out that has a sentiment or keywords or something that's starting to bring out this sort of topic or idea that we need something in this realm? So you're starting to pull these data sources together and align them so you can see them visually against the, again, justification you're trying to make. And then certainly external forces. Can we look at the market competition? Can we pull in data that's going on? What's getting funded? How is it getting funded? Are we thinking that we get this all the time, no one else is doing this? Well, probably someone's doing something. So what is it that they're doing? And so can we streamline the effort of this information being gathered and get it into a central visual form so that you can better intuit, is this the right thing to do? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's definitely data-driven, collecting, prioritizing automatically for us, pinpointing sentiment, pinpointing gaps, and bringing these things in alignment to bear so that we know what's possible.
Got it. Very interesting. So how does this help with the critical thinking aspect? So once you have this data, right?
Yeah. I mean, if, the critical thinking, which, I think we talk a lot about, some of that is missing because we've, myself included, we read the headlines of everything, but how deep do we go? And so I think in critical thinking, it's the technology can help us take the deep dive, but it's going to pinpoint those things we need to go deeper in and understand. So let me prioritize the things that are really critical for me to read and detail and where to go research. So I'm not wasting as much time, maybe going to do the looking, but I'm spending more time in that material that's going to be the most important to me in that particular area that we're looking at, if that helps. And by the way, this is as strong for entrepreneurial organizations as it is for large companies. When dealing with an innovation, it's like a startup inside of a big company. But I mean, I've worked with probably 800 or so startups and founders in my time, as well as being a venture funded startup. So it's helpful in any regard when you can put some of these pieces together to help with the organizational critical thinking and align people on all of that information at one time.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. Aligning all of the people at one time.
At one time, yeah.
Where does this help the most? Because it seems to me when you're talking that there's a broken piece towards the end of the funnel of, getting that information correctly communicated back to the top of the funnel, which is the board and the C-suite. That's what I see, but I don't know.
No, I agree. I think it helps. I think I'm going to feel my value more because I'm able to be recognized for having done this work and helping to bring forward a really good justification for that decision, right? The systems aren't going to make the decisions for you. They're just going to help you, again, build the data and the story and the critical information needed to say, is this one or this one that we need to go to market with? Yeah. Is it this one that you want to put 250 in, or is it this one you actually want to go ahead and put 3 million in, and let's just go out because the data is so strong? And again, I think it's just so important that you're building out these initial steps through to a beta to say we can see potential risks enough to know that it's not so risky, we're going to lose the money, but we might have to pivot. But we know what that point is. We kind of have a sense of that point.
That you have it locked and loaded at that point of when you need to pivot or if you need to pivot, because that's a critical point that doesn't get put in processes at all.
It's like scenario planning. If you haven't thought through the what if this happens on the not so great side, you won't see it coming if it does happen. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of, I think, what this process is about in decision making. The fear of making a wrong decision grips everyone. And then someone wants to point a finger at, why did you make that decision? If we can alleviate that, you're not having to point a finger at someone, that everyone collectively got the information, could look at it together, and that decision, again, aligned well, it takes some of the fear out of that. And if you make the wrong decision, at least you knew why, and you could kind of sense when it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. How has this innovation in critical thinking sped up the process for your clients and companies that you've worked with?
So you're breaking through an enormous number of barriers inside the organization, right? The stalls, we always hear, I can't get the innovation out the door. Can't get the innovation out the door. And so you're building maybe a little bit in a vacuum, and you don't know you're in that vacuum. So I think the speed in which, and I can give an example that we had working with this company where we're monetizing data. They had been trying to look at that for 3 years. And when it came in, we put a process in place, gathered all the data. We really did a whole evaluation, put a process together, gave them 3 options based on the data of disruptive, iterative, or just let's take a traditional approach, but we'll have some technology built into it. Which one would you like to do? We did that in less than 6 months, giving them the options, having the monetized strategy together. And in the next year, we were building. And so, they'd been trying for 3 years to get something out the door. And
Yeah,
so
wow.
within
3
a
months
year,
to
we're
6
building.
years. There you
Yeah.
go. That's awesome. Just so I know, define for me the difference between disruption or disruptive and innovative. No, and iterative.
Iterative.
Yeah.
Iterative to me is you've got something already, maybe even in the market, or you've started the process building a technology. Could be, again, I'll take conversational chat application. Maybe you had some semblance of some, chat application. Well, we're going to iterate by building in maybe more innovative features into that application. And that becomes an iterative process by how we're building out the feature set to become more distinctly different and competitively advantaged.
Got it. That versus, you said, a more traditional approach. What would be a more traditional approach?
Well, and I'm saying traditional in the sense of if it's a traditional company, for them, it could be that, let's say in the way that you're delivering something today, can we add, this is maybe not the best example, but if I'm a manufacturer of fabric, I do textiles, can we add a strand of sensing textile so that it's sensing my heart rate? That's still iterative. It's innovative. In some ways, it could be disruptive in potentially the way we do it. But I'm starting with this sort of iterative, from traditional to adding some sense of a technology into that.
I get it. Okay, good. Thank you.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Teresa, how did you become a challenge junkie? Were you always like this when you're little? Did you drive your parents nuts? What?
Well, I did drive my parents nuts. And I grew up with an entrepreneurial father. I have 5 brothers. I like to tease that I was the football. So, we were always competing. I was a competitive tennis player. I just liked the challenge. My dad was learning to the day he died. He was always, hungry. He instilled a very strong moral foundation as well as, growth. Just grow, work till you die. Work to something you love, do something for people. And so I think that the challenge, I just grabbed a hold of it early because I was always fed by, how some people are the people that if you tell me you can't do something, they just stop. And that was just never me. If you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to go figure out how to do it. And I started that maybe because my brothers always teased me.
You can't do it. Well, thanks to your brothers, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are your crazy passions outside of work?
Oh, funny. Well, I have a band called the Headless Chickens, and we've been playing for almost a little over 10 years now, but I'm a musician. When we started, this was a passion of my husband's to want to be a musician. And so he put 3 people in our living room that had never played an instrument in their lifetime and asked me to come sing with them and play guitar. And it was the worst thing in the world. And I just had to walk out. I did. I'd this is it. You're a bunch of headless chickens. And that was the band name. And every Monday night we'd get in and we'd work on songs and work on them until eventually we all started playing out. And now we have 7 members in the band. And, we play charity events and have a lot of fun.
That's super cool. So what kind of music?
Yeah, I write. So some of my originals, but I also love Bruce Springsteen. I play a lot of, especially his newer stuff. This last one that he just did, this last album. But Patty Griffin, Brandy Carlisle. I mean, we would do old Tom Petty stuff. I love blues, so it's a lot of the kind of old bluesy style rock stuff.
That's awesome. So the Headless Chickens, right?
The
Now,
Headless Chickens.
did you learn to sing by doing that, or did you know how to sing before
No,
that?
I grew up playing guitar at the age of 7, and I played for my church. I was, taught. I was actually handed a guitar by my aunt who said, we've got to have music in the church that's more fun and folky. So at 7 years old, she put a guitar in my hand, and she had a friend of hers teach me 3 chords, and they literally threw me on the stage that weekend on the altar. And so I started playing and singing and leading the congregation until I graduated high school.
Starting at 7.
No, 7.
They either saw that you were going to take the challenge, or they were really hard at
No.
like someone to help out.
Well, yeah, who knew?
That's awesome. So you did this all the way through high school?
I did it all the way through high school until I graduated. My dad was very musical. He played trumpet he wasn't in the military, but he paid 15 for the Army band and had an incredible voice and just, strong voice. It's one of those when he would start singing in church and get on the wrong line that we all sunk under the pew because you could hear his voice from all over. And so everybody would follow him. So
awesome. I love it. The Headless Chicken.
I would say music and then skiing, and I play pickleball and tennis and stuff like that. But
yeah, that's great. So do you still do all those things? But like your crazy passion is the Headless Chicken.
Music is still a big part of my life. Being athletic is still hiking. I live in the mountains now, and so we go hiking a lot, and just outdoors and getting the mental downtime has been it's really important. I've always tried to keep that up. And I talk to young people, there are years that it's just it seems impossible to be able to take downtime. I'm just here to tell you, you build it. You have to work it. It's a work in progress, but carve out the time, put it on your calendar, and just make sure you're getting that time for yourself.
Yeah.
It's easy to lose it.
It's really important. Super important. So Teresa, tell people how they get a hold of you, how they find you.
So you can go to LinkedIn and reach out and link to me, Teresa at Plaza Bridge Group, TERESA at Plaza Bridge Group. You can reach out to me. You can call, but it's harder to get me by phone. So probably the best thing is to reach out on LinkedIn and send me a note to say, can we connect? And you can also get to us on the Plaza Bridge Group website and, put in a form or send in a request to get to me. But love talking.
I know LinkedIn definitely works. That's how I met you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you wrote a book particularly for women, but I don't think it just applies to women. It's really how to challenge the status quo and all the principles that you've learned. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So all that I am now that I know, it's a life lessons book. I've, spent growing up working the entrepreneurship at my age group, there weren't a lot of women, weren't a lot of investors. No investors were investing in women. And, the whole corporate world, just so many lessons that I learned along the way that I wanted to share. I put them in somewhat of in storytelling and a little bit of workbook to help you think through in the critical way, the ways that I work through things. And maybe it'll help someone, especially young professionals going out there. It is stories that talk about the challenges in corporate America as a woman wanting to achieve greater things, how sometimes it feels like everyone is, the culture might not be as good. How do you make the decisions that this isn't the right thing for me to be doing, which sometimes feel really, really hard, but especially on how do you go after funding for something that you really believe in when you're being ask if you can babysit my children. You're in an investor competition and you've got 5 men presenting their ideas, and then here are these 2 beautiful women and they're presenting the most incredible idea and it's solid, and the only question that the investors asked them were, can you babysit my kids? And
seriously?
No, that's a serious story.
Okay.
And so how do you respond?
How do you respond?
I wanted to help these women. How do you respond to something like that? I had those challenges. I had, men waving fingers in my face going, you can't do this. You cannot do this. And it's like, how do you get over those things? And sometimes they're purposefully challenging because they need you to have the confidence to stand up to it. And sometimes it's just, how do you discern those? And how do you come back? How do you come back quickly?
Well, it sounds like a great book. And I know that you have it on Kindle as well, so I'm going to be bored.
Yes, I do. Thank
Teresa,
you for
thank you
asking.
so much. Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I really like how you put the different parts of critical thinking in certain categories and buckets based on the barriers that companies go through when they're iterating a technology product or disrupting.
Yeah.
And, you've used AI to pull in the data and help people with that.
Yes. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you bringing in information that you're bringing to the public. It's such important information and helpful lessons. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I have a special place in my heart for disruptors, being one myself. I know the challenges that we go through. I know the arrows in our backs that we have. And there's just a whole new territory of being a frontiersman, that if other disruptors can listen to other disruptors, there's a lot of things that are in common, and there's a lot of new things that they can learn to help overcome.
Well, and I will say there are a lot of people that want to shoot the disruptor. I mean, they want to kill the ideas. And so those are the ones, that's where the challenge junkie comes in. Say thank you very much for the feedback and go do it. Because
those are the ones
a really good idea.
Because you guys are making the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's a wrap, everyone. If you learned something today, go tell someone about this podcast and tell people to go disrupt their markets with a tidbit from this show. Thank you for listening to Disruption Interruption, where we transform lives, change consumer behavior, alter economics, and never accept the status quo. Ciao for now.
Because we live in a highly litigious society, with America being one of the top litigious countries in the world, here's our legal disclaimer. This information is not intended to be a substitute for professional public relations or legal advice. Do not disregard seeking professional, legal, healthcare, or financial advice, or delay seeking professional PR or legal advice because of something you have heard here. Contact an attorney to obtain advice on any particular legal situation or problem. Use of this podcast or our website or any of its social media or email links do not create an agency-client relationship between Johto PR and the user.